Hello, dear listener. This is Elka here. I'm the host of this podcast. And a quick note before we dive in today. If you follow my work, you may have noticed that the episodes on this podcast have been becoming increasingly sporadic. The reason for that is because I'm a mom with three beautiful children and a psychotherapist with full practice. And the only thing that I can afford to neglect without consequences to people I care about is this podcast. Because of that, I'd like to ask for your help in two ways. Firstly, if you enjoy this podcast, please like, share, subscribe, pass it on to anyone you know. This will help this podcast reach more people, even when I don't post to social media for a few months at a time. Secondly, if you have a topic, either about eating disorder recovery or the broader therapy world, that you are passionate about, that has some emotional charge, maybe it's controversial, and that you're willing to share your story around it, please reach out to me about recording an episode together. You can find my email and my website linked below. With that, let's jump into the episode today. This is the Ideology podcast. I am your host, Elka Kubaku, licensed social worker and psychotherapist. In this podcast, we explore divisive issues around food, health, and body image with the goal of mending relationships within the eating disorder recovery professional community and creating a space where a multiplicity of perspectives can coexist harmoniously. This podcast is uncensored and encompasses the political and ideological spectrum. If you believe something you hear is harmful or misinformed, please be respectful to the speaker, and also feel free to reach out about recording another episode on the same topic from your vantage point. My hope is that if, as professionals, we can hold each other's stories with respect and compassion, we'll be better able to do so for our clients. Moral judgment is at the heart of so much of the division in our field and in our society today. Moral judgment may be necessary to call out and name oppressive systems that have been whitewashed or justified. However, when we label anyone from the opposing camp, whatever that opposing camp is, as either evil, idiotic, or in the mental health profession, we say causing harm, it is the surest way to stifle dialogue and flatten the humanity of individual therapists. Sometimes I'll hear people make statements like, if you blink, how can you even consider yourself a therapist? Or, clearly, you still have your own healing to do. How can you be treating other people? Or, this person should never have been a therapist to begin with. And this is true in cases of abuse and exploitation. However, in anything beyond that, it runs the risk not only of dehumanizing individual therapists, but also of disregarding the experience of clients who may have benefited from them. Some time ago, I came across a social media post by Kayla Perry, who's our guest today, where she spoke about a therapist, her favorite therapist, who she later discovered served a jail sentence for not actually being a therapist for unlicensed practice and insurance fraud. In this episode, we dive deeper into Kayla's experience with this therapist and her perceptions of her after finding out about the jail sentence. I hope that you will not take this episode as a justification for dishonesty, but as an invitation into the contradictions that live inside of each one of us, and an exploration of the question, are we defined by our worst actions? Kayla is a licensed behavior analyst with master's degrees in clinical psychology and applied behavior analysis. She is known for her bluntness, directness, and love for debate, as you will hear in this podcast. And she takes a practical approach that emphasizes common sense and honest conversation over rigid clinical jargon. Kayla can be found on her Instagram and Substack, which I will link below. You had posted to Instagram a little
Mhm.
while ago, and the post starts, "My favorite psychotherapist I've ever had went to jail. Turns out she wasn't a licensed psychotherapist at all." And then in the next slide, you say, "She's still my favorite to this day, and the orange suit changed nothing about how I see her and what she did for me." I want to rewind to the beginning of the story.
Sure.
Can you tell me about where you were when you first started seeing this person?
Sure. I was a teenager. I want to say I was 15 or 16, and I had just gotten out of residential treatment for anorexia. So that was in a hospital type of setting where psychotherapists, psychiatrists, and Nurses were all on staff for us around the clock. After we had weaned off of the residential treatment, they always recommend that you start some form of aftercare. Aftercare is basically a couple times, 2 to 3 times a week is what they suggest going to outpatient therapy, so an hour per session. I can't remember where the referral came from for this therapist that went to jail that I saw, but my brother at the time was seeing her already for a heroin addiction or, just really multi-drug and alcohol addiction. He had already been in rehab, I had just gotten out of treatment, so my poor parents were kind of scrambling to find someone, and I wanna say it was my mom that got the referral for her, and my mom had met her through treating my brother already, and she had only good things to say, so that's how we initially met.
Yeah. So you were coming out of residential treatment for anorexia.
Yes.
And where were you in your recovery at the time? I know anorexia can sometimes be persistent, and some people leave treatment and are feeling pretty stable, and others are leaving treatment
Yeah.
and so stable.
Yeah, so I actually was in residential for about 60 days, and I was by no means committed to recovering at all. I was still at the point where I was already plotting how little I would eat, how much I would exercise, what I would have to say to whatever stupid therapist I had to see to be able to end treatment and just get back to my routine, which was obviously very unhealthy routine, but I was determined to get back to what I was doing before. So it would take a long time, probably a good decade almost, to actually commit to, you know what? Life is kind of miserable when I'm trying to keep up with all of the behaviors that go along with anorexia. And I think prior to that decade ending, yeah, all I wanted to do was find ways that were a little bit more socially acceptable to restrict food and a little bit more socially acceptable to exercise, 6 hours a day.
And so you entered therapy with the intention of getting away with as much as you could and just
Correct.
say whatever you could to let the therapist know that you're doing okay, that there's nothing she needs to do.
Yeah, I'm cured, lady. Like, look at me, obviously. You know what is weird though, Elka, is I think that because I was not forced into residential technically. I mean, I had started to understand that, hey, I'm making up excuses at my job so that I could leave work as a bagger and a cashier at a grocery store because I had some sort of compulsion to go exercise. I mean, it was to the point where I was dropping anything I was doing and just obeying any compulsion I had. So I had anorexia with like the exercise purging is what they referred to it as. It was boundless. There were no boundaries. If that little hint in me came that I needed to exercise, I was gone. It would not matter who I was with or what I was doing. And that being said, I did understand that was completely unsustainable and unhealthy. So I don't know that I had completely detached trying to convince myself that I could do this forever. And that's when I actually approached my parents and I said, "I think I really need help. Like none of my friends are doing this. None of the people on the basketball team are doing this. This is actually really starting to scare me a little bit." So it was me who initiated treatment, not quite understanding what would all go into it. And so after we had committed to the treatment center at the time that I would go to, once I got there is when I started thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm really scared. I think I need to pretend now." So it almost happened in like reverse order. I'm sure that's common for other people though.
Mhm. Yeah. You enter treatment being like, this exercise compulsion is getting to me, it's interrupting my life, I want to stop it. And then when you get there, maybe you met people who are trying to help you eat more regularly, cut out all restriction. Maybe they want you to gain weight if that was medically necessary. And you're like, this is beyond what I'd signed up for.
All of that, yes. I think all it took was for them telling me that I needed to gain weight, and I was like, "This is bullshit. What kind of treatment center are you running?" And which is so it is so silly in retrospect to think that I actually thought that, to think that someone told me that I was, unhealthily and scarily thin, and I needed to get to a reasonable weight considering my activity level. I thought that was completely outside of anything that was reasonable at the time. And it's just kind of funny to look back on that and think about how kind of how deranged I was mentally. And it's funny when other people say things like I was obviously in treatment with others that were anorexic and bulimic, and they reported very similar experiences and very similar feelings. I never looked at anybody else and said, "You're deranged." It was only me. It was only my own thinking that was like, "I'm the one that's clearly a little bit, messed
Mhm.
up in the head here. Everyone feels way more reasonable than me." So that was
Yeah.
also something that was, dare I use the word triggering? I just, for lack of a better word, it was like a culture shock walking into treatment.
Mhm. And see how many people were like you,
To see how
or
many people were like me, to see how many people were more severe, honestly, than me, and to be watched and surveilled 24/7. That was I think that might have been the hardest part for me. And I still have thoughts about group treatment for anorexia or, group treatments in general. I think for anorexia being so female dominated and putting 12 anorexic and bulimic girls in a group together all day long, I think that poses its own complications. I mean, my first day, one of the long time, like frequent flyers, she had been in and out of this program several times at that point. She was already trying to teach me ways to cheat the system by, oh, when one of the guards is sitting next to you at the table during dinner, I leave the flap of the lid open on the butter so that it looks like I had part of it, but there's still like half of it left in there and they can't see. So, I mean, it was already that too, where half of us are in there because we're terrified and we've never been in a situation like this before. But then some of the long timers who, for reasons we could understand, they're also wanting to hold on to their addictions. They're trying to teach us basically how to stay the exact same.
yeah, and you absorbed some of that and left with some of
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah, definitely.
So you start seeing this therapist, and tell me what that was like. What was that treatment like? What did it do for you?
I loved her. I mean, the stereotypical person that you feel like you've known forever, that was this person. I mean, you look at her and she has this really kind face and she's small and kind of she's just like this welcoming little ember of joy basically. But she wasn't overly affirmative or giving, and she didn't have the stereotypical how do you feel about that sort of like warmth. She had kind of like an edge to her that I really liked. That's always, personality-wise, I think I always do well with someone that's a little bit more straightforward and a little bit more just kind of willing to level with me, and that was her. But she did it in a way that was really respectful and kind of, I felt like she was a guide almost, more so than a therapist.
Mm,
And our sessions, in retrospect, I mean, they mimicked a lot of what I did during like my practicum in clinical psychology. Like you're sitting in her office on chairs or couches facing each other, and she would just kind of let me start the session, decide what direction I wanted to take the conversation for the day, and then she would just kind of try to pick away at some of my beliefs. So she was very good at telling me, well, what you just said 2 sentences ago actually is completely the opposite of what you're telling me now. And she told me from day one, you're going to get really pissed off at a lot of the things that I say to you, and I don't want you or your mom to think that that's a sign that something is wrong here. That's actually exactly what needs to be done. And I
mhm,
said, okay. And I just really appreciated that honesty. I really appreciated someone that would tell me what to expect from session, what we were going to be targeting, and giving me kind of homework assignments when I would leave. So it was almost identical to, I'm assuming, what most modern psychotherapy looks like.
mhm, yeah. So she was kind, but you appreciated her directness, and that she would call
Yeah.
out what you were doing, what you were saying, where you were contradicting yourself.
Yes, and I didn't get that in residential a whole lot. I got more of, I mean, my psychiatrist that I really liked had a similar personality to the therapist that I saw. So I really I really liked him. I think what I had a hard time with was the therapist in residential, from what I remember. For what all I know, my memory could also be skewed just thinking back to 15 plus years ago. It felt very vague and a little bit overly soft for me in therapy. It felt like, okay, thank you so much for sharing. Everyone clap for Kayla sharing. I just, that
Ooh.
works for some people. Fine. If that works for you, wonderful. Who am I to tell you it's stupid? But for me, it felt very demoralizing and condescending. And I don't like being treated like a fragile little child. Even if I was fragile, because I mean mentally I clearly was very fragile, but I don't like being treated that way.
Feel that. Can
Mhm.
you some of the moments that stand out when you think back to your time with this therapist?
I will never forget our second session. So the first from my memory, I want to say it was kind of like an intake where she's just getting to know me. She wanted to hear my side of the story. She explained, I guess how she would go about, hey, so I know that I'm seeing you and your brother. This is a completely separate issue, but there will be time for you and your brother to be in here together and you're like there to be family sessions along with just one to one. But the second session, when we really started getting into the therapy, she came to session with a giant bag of peanut M&Ms, and in retrospect, I'm positive she did that on purpose. And I walk in and she's walking into the lobby as I'm sitting in the chair just reading a magazine and she's crunching on her M&Ms and M's and she goes, "I'm ready for you." And she just like kind of waves me into her office. And as I sit down, she goes, "Man, these are so good. Do you want some?" Just dead faced. Did like hardly blinked. And in my head, I thought, is she serious? Do I want M&Ms? What does she think this is? So I remember getting upset at the time, thinking like this feels like a trick to me. And so I politely declined. And at the time she said, "Are you sure?" And I said, "I'm sure. I don't want any." And so she dropped it. But we would revisit moments like that, and she would bring it up again, where she said, I see that every time you're offered something, you always say no. And I'm really going to start challenging you on that. I let it slide the first time because we're just getting to know each other, but don't think that that's going to be a regular thing that I encourage." And so that is definitely a moment that stands out. I mean, nobody in residential treatment did that. None of the psychotherapists or staff ever sat down to eat with us. I never even saw them drink anything in front of us. I remember one time specifically in residential, I was leaving the lead psychotherapist's office and I looked down in her trash can and she had this, like garbage from her lunch. And I saw that it was a salad. And for some reason, that set me off. I thought, you get to eat a salad and you're making me eat cupcakes and mac and cheese and bread? That's so unfair. And like, again, was that reasonable or rational? No, you could eat whatever the hell you want. I mean, you're the adult here. but but yeah, for whatever reason, and especially because their eating style and whatever they ate was never made known to any of us, it all felt like they were behind this curtain that none of us were allowed to see versus this quote unquote psychotherapist I saw. She was pretty open from the front about it. And again, back to the honesty piece, that's just something I really, really appreciated.
Yeah, it's actually become quite common when I was doing my internship at
Mhm.
a partial hospitalization program that we would eat together with the
Oh,
people.
wow.
Yeah, yeah, but so it's on what I hear her doing with you. It sounds like combination of transference work, which is just the way you show up outside here is the way you show up in here, and we can work with it as it's happening instead of
Mhm.
just you coming in with your stories about what's happened.
Mhm.
And there's an exposure aspect too, where she's pushing you to do things that are uncomfortable.
Correct. Yes. And I mean, she was that person that now that I think about it, just every effort she made to change my behavior, it seems so It seems like she plotted out this entire time frame in her mind of a perfect hierarchy of exactly what she would make me do. I mean, in retrospect, I'm thinking of, for example, I would come to session crabby, teenage angst, complaining about my mom making me eat something, and she would listen for about 2 minutes, and she's like, "You know what? Hold that thought. We're actually gonna call your mom right now. We're gonna talk through this with her because I'm not your mother." And so, just the level of, "I'm not here to listen to you complain. We're gonna do something about it." Um, I just found that really I found that really interesting, and, as diluted as it may sound, there are bits and pieces of her treatment with me that I've actually kind of integrated into my own practice. I'm licensed, I I have a real license, but that there are things that she did that I just took such value from and that I've seen other people take such value from, that I think influenced me for the better in
Yeah.
multiple ways.
Or say more about what you've taken from your treatment with her,
I
how
think
you
it was her willingness to show the human side of her instead of just, "Kayla, you lead the session. I'll follow you wherever you go. And if you don't want to go there, then I might poke and prod a little, but ultimately you." I I have really wrestled with the idea of client-centered care for a while, in the sense that I think the new understanding of client-centered care is that we put way too much on the client to dictate the pace, dictate the tone, you decide what we're gonna talk about, where we're gonna go. That's what I'm paying you for. Like, we come to therapy needing things to be revealed and needing direction, and I think needing to understand how we are to change. And if we were capable of knowing the direction ourselves, I don't think we would be seeing a therapist in the first place. So, she really taught me that, hey, yes, there is space for listening to people and hearing their perspective of things, of course. But following up with some action item and practice in
Mm,
the new skill or the replacement skill is vital. I mean, that's what I continuously find myself really frustrated about in my own practice is just you feel like you're giving and giving and giving recommendations only for the person to take it as like an optional recommendation, which technically it is. We're not forcing anybody to do anything, but it can be really frustrating when you tell people things over and over and they just don't do it. Like, they just won't do it. Whereas she almost said, "I'm not gonna give you a choice as to whether or not we're gonna do it. We're doing this right now. The door's right there. You're free to leave, but I will call your mother and tell her that you left my office." And so, she was just so good at the time of understanding that I respected my parents and they're the authority. I was never a teenager that felt like, obviously I had the rebellion in me. I didn't follow all the rules, but I still understood and was kind of fearful of my parents. And she very meticulously, but not in a manipulative way, used that. Which
yeah.
sounds awful when you say it out loud, but I guess it's hard for me to describe.
Mhm. Having a firm presence was something that you needed.
Yes. That's always been the case for me. I think what I discovered in treatment for anorexia was I'm extremely impulsive. Um, and I guess I didn't realize it until maybe I went to treatment, but I almost have no breaks. It is just part of it is personality. I'm very so like I'm sure that feeds into it. But even up until now, I'm 34 now, and it is extremely hard for me to catch myself when I'm about to make an impulsive decision. And I think that having a really firm presence, like my father, like my husband, like that pretend
Mm,
therapist, I need those guardrails. And that might be something I always need in a partner, in a family member, in a friend. I've gotten a lot better about understanding, "Kayla, you're doing that thing again where you're getting overly excited and now you're fully vested in making this decision and you think it's what could go wrong." But there are plenty of times when I just, before I know it, I've said yes to something that I don't have the time or energy to commit to. I'm doing something that I shouldn't be doing. This little kitten was a perfect example of like, a baby needs my help. Of course, I'll help the baby. And it's like,
Mhm.
will this end? That's something that to me is very mild. I could take care of newborn kittens in my sleep. But it's like, did I need to take that on? Did I really need to? I just started a new contract. I'm like worried about money because of this new contract. And there's just something in me that I think Anna Lemke describes this so well. She said some people just have a personality where they need a lot of friction. And I think I heard that and thought, I've never heard it described that way, but that sounds like me.
Your experience with anorexia is pretty common in terms of hiding things and in some way pushing back on the treatment that you're asking for. And it's interesting to me because I think on this podcast, I've gotten a lot of people coming from the opposite side who were in what felt like a more, which is kind of different from your therapist, but were in a more coercive
Uh-huh.
environment where there was no option. You had to just
Sure.
eat what was there. And they were like, on the flip side, if I'm not doing something, there's a reason why. And I want you to understand that and I want you to see that.
Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah. What I hear you saying also though is that there was a humanness in it in the sense that, and this is in contrast to what you've seen and what sometimes is the case with client-centered care, where you weren't the only person in the room.
Mhm. Correct. That's a wonderful way of putting it. Yes, it's not like this session and galaxy revolves around me. It was, there's this other person here that I'm disappointing, and she didn't shove it in my face when I disappointed her, but I mean, she had no problem telling me, "I am really disappointed in you." And she would make that judgmental face. And I was like, "Oh my God." It just, I couldn't believe it when she first said that to me. It reminded me of how my dad would tell me that and how effective that was in getting me to shape up.
Mm. You appreciated that,
I
her
did.
saying.
Yes, I did. I mean, and that's the human side to me, is someone that they build enough of a trust with you to where they expect things from you, and they see that maybe you haven't reached your potential in one way or another, or you haven't made good on whatever deal that you guys settled together. And I mean, I never saw her as a friend. I think that obviously has its own issues with that. But she had the friend qualities in the sense that she hears you, she understands, but she doesn't let you off easy, and she will always tell you the truth. And that's what I needed that. I needed
Mhm.
that, definitely.
I was recently reading an article by a psychoanalytic therapist named Jonathan Shedler,
Mhm.
but he was writing about how empathy in the therapy space is often selective because empathy means we're seeing something of the person in front of us. And
Mhm.
when we have only the soft sort of therapist-y empathy, what we're not seeing and making space for is maybe anger or the parts of a client that are conflicted, or maybe parts of you that might be out for might want to hurt you in some
Mhm.
way. And the directness felt empathetic because it was an accurate reflection of
Yes.
what
Yes. That's a wonderful way to put it. Yes. It was it felt like you respect me enough to be completely accurate and honest with what you think is happening here.
Mhm.
And, you know, even in professional relationships, even with a lot of these trends that have kind of swept through my field, I feel very similar. I feel like, please stop lying to me. Like, please just tell me how you feel. Please just tell me what you're thinking. Just say it. I find myself saying that 1,000 times a day. Just say it. Just spit it out. Well, I don't want to sound like, I don't care. I don't care what you sound like. Just say it. It's very difficult to hurt my feelings at this point. Like, just come out and say it. And I don't know. I haven't been in school for a long time, so I'm not sure if that's necessarily something that's directly taught, but I mean, it is like a very common stereotype for a reason, I think, in therapeutic fields.
Yeah, and I see it in reaction to some of the maybe more coercive experience that you had in residential, where there is
Yeah.
these rules that are set, but those rules are not a reflection of you, and in some ways, they're not seeing you. So there's an internal pushback to that, or
Mhm.
which historically people called resistance. Now people are talking about calling ambivalence or recognizing what it is inside of you.
Sure.
That's what I feel like some of the softness is in response to, is that I'm not the judge of your character. I don't know the absolute truth.
Mm.
And it's my job to sort of hold you up to that. So there's a kind of respect, and I'm willing to see your experience.
Sure.
But what's can be lacking in that is that, firstly, like you're describing, there's a kind of perception of fragility,
Mhm.
which felt in some ways infantilizing.
Yes. Yes, like, you cannot possibly handle just the uncensored version of what I wanna say, so let me make sure that it's watered down for you.
Mhm.
And I think for a while I kind of pride myself on the belief that anything that triggers us is our responsibility. Anything that upsets us really is our kind of the stoic version, what Aurelius talks about all the time, which is it's not the thing itself that hurt us, it's our perception of the thing and how we have the power over our beliefs. But one thing that I really, really, lack of a better word again, are triggered by is people who just insist upon things having this kind of rosy, fluffy covering
Mhm.
or packaging. I have a really hard time with that.
You feel like it pushes you to shut down a part of yourself.
How do I typically respond? I feel like I'm being deceived, which makes me just, yeah, a little bit just wanting to, then my empathy and heart completely closes at that point. And I'm like, you know what? If you won't level with me, I think I might be done with this conversation. I will play the part of being cordial and finishing out whatever it is we need to on a professional level, but I don't trust that this person could speak to me through greater challenges or what I'm truly thinking. So, I mean, in that respect, now that I say it out loud, maybe I'm just being a hypocrite because it's like, well, you're watering it down because you think I can't handle it, but now I'm not saying what I need to say because I think that you're incapable of hearing it.
I appreciate the honesty. The What's striking me now, back to our original conversation about your therapist and finding out that she served a jail sentence for fraud, there is a paradox in it that you're describing her as the most honest person in your treatment, who was willing to say things as it is, who was real, felt genuine, was willing to express her reactions to you.
Mhm.
And at the same time, her practice was a
Yes.
dis some way. How do you make
Yes.
sense?
I don't know that you know what? If you have when you figure it out, Elka, you let me know because I don't know how to make sense of those things. I strongly believe in allowing people the opportunity to redeem themselves. I have done a lot of things that I don't even want to speak about, and I don't think they make me a bad person. I think they make me someone that was irrational, unreasonable, impulsive, and sorely lacking in judgment. But I think we all just have a tendency to what am I trying to say? I think that you can do wonderful things while also leading other parts of your life that are deceptive. I think that you can lie to someone, but also do wondrous things for them. I think that terrible people are capable of doing good things, and on the flip side, wonderful people are capable of doing pretty horrible things. And I think the more that I've tried to figure these things out, I feel like I just run myself in circles trying to figure out like how could someone like her be so open and honest? How could someone like her resonate with me the way that licensed trained professionals could not? But also, she technically was lying to my face every single time I saw her, in the sense that she knew she was treating me without being a therapist. She knew that she was engaging in fraudulent behavior, like, probably, the entire time that we saw each other. I guess the part of me that really sees the good in people wants to believe that the two can be separate. And maybe that's a naive point of view. Maybe it's naive to think that, well, she was wonderful to me and has done wonderful things for me. And the stuff she did, yeah, it's awful. And I would obviously never condone or approve of those things. But I don't feel deceived or lied to by her. I don't feel robbed of the truth. I don't feel like I was a chess piece in whatever fraudulent game she was playing. I
Yeah.
just don't.
It was clear that there was something genuine there.
Yes. And I
Mhm.
think, my husband is like a very skeptical type. So he would be the type that would learn of this information, her fraudulent license and whatever else, and he would immediately say, "What else was she lying about? Was every single thing that she ever said to me untrue? Was everything about our relationship, this fairy tale?" And I think that's fair. I think that's completely understandable why someone would go to that. I just n I s At the time, I never found myself going there. In retrospect, I never find myself going there. I still don't feel like everything that we discussed and worked through was based on a lie. I just
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your immediate gut level reaction when you first heard that she had been sentenced?
Me being a teenager, so when did she get sentenced? I wanna say that I was still a teenager at the time that she was sentenced, because she was sentenced quite a few years after this we initially had found out what was going on. But I remember feeling really sorry for her.
Mhm.
And just I don't know that I felt angry at all at any point. I mean, there were hints of me that wondered, like, "Oh, well, she never really tried to, overbill or overcharge us." That So there was, like, that selfish side of me that thought, like, "She never did anything to me." So, but I mean, clearly she was taking money from other people's pockets. Clearly she was overbilling for other people and fraudulently charging cards, what we would come to find out, for sessions that never happened. So there were
Wow.
things that she did to other people that are just awful. And still,
Mm.
though, I found myself feeling sorry for her. I mean, immediately I thought, wow, she would always dress so cute and so nice, and I thought, she has to wear a jumpsuit and she's gonna be isolated in a prison cell all d I guess I started illustrating what I thought she must be feeling, and I felt terrible.
Mhm. Yeah, you had empathy for her.
Yes, 1,000%, because I would just I mean, I can't imagine that. I cannot imagine. She did all of that for a reason, and I highly doubt she went into all of this thinking, "You know what? This is gonna be a cash cow of a business. I'm completely going to I'm gonna make money billing fraudulently." I wanna believe that she didn't start all of this thinking that. I wanna believe that people get mixed up in things. I've certainly done that with my impulsive thinking and my poor decision making, and you're just so deep in it that you feel like, I just need to milk this out for as long as I can and hope that I will have the wherewithal to be a better person and turn it around down the line. And I want to believe that's what happened to her. And again, that just made me feel even more bad. I almost wonder if she was relieved, any part of her. Obviously, everything was taken from her and stripped from her. I have no idea what happened to her after that. I tried to find her. She seems to be wiped from the internet entirely. Um,
Mhm.
but I wonder, okay, fine, it's finally over now. I'm caught. I don't have to pretend anymore. I don't have to concern myself with all of the ins and outs of the trying to manipulate my way through this. Maybe this is the clean slate that I needed to change my life. I don't know, because I have felt that way before, where I've
Mhm.
I've sustained a lie for so long that sometimes I wish I would just get caught, but I was too cowardly to just come out with the truth. So the way out for me was I just wish I would get caught by someone else. And so that's where I kind of maybe that's where the empathy comes from for her.
You see something of yourself in
Yes. I
experience.
see, like, the you just I my husband used to say this all the time, "Kayla, you go down swinging." Like, when you have kind of been mixed up in something, you try to claw at your entire way down, you try to tell yourself every step of the way that you're gonna figure it out. You just need to learn how to drop it, Kayla. You just need to learn how to be like, "You know what? There is no good outcome here. I messed this up royally, and time to
Mhm.
move on." So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Had the experience of getting trapped in a lie that you couldn't easily get out of.
Right. Yes, yes. I could
Mhm,
completely resonate with, "Oh boy,
mhm.
I am so deep into this. I need to tell someone. I'm just gonna come clean. No, I won't. No, I won't. I could keep up this lie." Yeah.
Is is there any particular experience in that that you feel comfortable sharing? Mm,
I mean, anorexia itself very much felt that way, where so many times I felt like at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday night, I could be committed to changing. And you know what? I'm going to tell my mom and dad everything that I've been doing. I've been playing this part that I'm doing well in therapy, and I went to work when really I called off and made up a bunch of crap, and I blew off my therapist, and I just did a bunch of things that I shouldn't have been doing at the time. And just I don't know what it is about the human condition where you could commit and feel so strongly about, "I need to just come clean," and then a couple hours go by, and that's enough time to convince yourself that you don't actually have to, and that whatever lie you're managing to keep straight in your head is, for whatever reason, worth it. Whatever reason is worth it to keep up with all of the stress that comes with continuously lying, and
mhm,
this is really embarrassing to admit. Um, I'll give a mild example first.
mhm,
I almost feel like anorexia made it so that my first instinct is to lie. Like my default setting almost is to lie. So the mild example is at work. If someone will say to me, "Oh, Kayla, have you started that report that I told you was due in 2 days?" I completely forgot, right? Forgot about this report. Now, normal, mature people will say, "I am so sorry. I actually completely forgot, but I will get it done." Or they might say, "I completely forgot. I'm so sorry. It just my fault. Can I have an extra 2 days?" Me, I say, "Oh yeah, I can send it to you by the end of the day today." Why? Like, why? And it happens so quickly that I only realize it after I have already lied about it. And that is still an instinct. It won't happen all the time, but I mean, it has happened recently where I would almost rather be like, "Oh, I have to redeem myself and finish really quickly and scramble. See? It's ready. There you go. No, now you're none the wiser." Versus
mhm.
just telling them, "Hey, I actually completely forgot. I mismanaged my time," whatever the reason was, which was related to being distracted, mismanaging my time, forgetting to add it to my calendar, whatever, whatever. And, sometimes it makes me sad that and frustrated that that's my go-to, considering all of the people in my life that I have really appreciated are the ones that have been direct enough to just level with me. And I'm like, why is it so difficult for me to do that all the time with people? But like, why I loved and appreciated that honesty so much from people, even if that initial embarrassment or frustration or that sting of, "Oh, that hurt to hear that." Why is it so hard for me to find it within myself to do that? That's something that I continue to wonder about and work on as it relates to being like trapped in the lie.
Yeah. There is a book called Fawning
Mhm.
that reminding me of,
Mhm.
where the author describes how, in this case, it's or what it's often seen as is people pleasing as a means of survival when you're dependent on someone's approval that is also aggressive or unsafe
Mhm.
in some way. For you,
Yeah.
you have an interesting paradox where, on the one hand, you're like, I will say it as it is. In some
Mhm.
ways, you don't have that sort of people pleasing softness,
Yeah.
but you have that gut level instinct, which I imagine you learned somewhere, that to say
Mhm.
the truth is danger.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, someone I really loved, I saw a psychotherapist, I wanna say this was like a year and a half ago, really briefly. I have panic disorder, was on Klonopin for 15 years, weaned myself off entirely. But then my panic attacks started getting really, really bad again a few years ago. So I thought, and I tried everything my own first, and that's when I'm like, okay, this is still not working. I think I need help from someone. And she told me, because I told her what I'm about to tell you, is she said, the whole ongoing joke is that everyone goes to therapy because of their mom. And I'm not blaming my mom because I'm an adult that could control myself for the most part. But it is it has always been her gut instinct to lie and to be like, "Oh, no, nothing, nothing." Like, the ongoing joke is that, my dad always jokes about, like, "Yeah, I wouldn't take anything your mother says seriously the 1st or 10th time she tells you." Or my mom will call me and ask me for something or share something and then insist that I do not tell my dad. But he does the same too, like, "You cannot tell your mom about this." So I think that I guess from, like, a familial standpoint, there has been a long-standing culture of keeping things from one another, and I guess consciously, I can't tell you that, like, "Oh, yeah, I got it from my mom and my dad." I don't know. There's probably a lot of theories about what went wrong with my thinking in those experiences, but yes, lying is very normal in our family.
Mhm, mhm, yeah. You experience the same paradox that we've seen with your therapist, where you have, on the one hand, that directness and I will say it as it is, and you don't need to
Mhm.
soften things for me. And
Yeah,
on the have something inside of you that will hide things, that will lie and justify it and get yourself stuck in.
correct. Correct. Yep. And it's so weird to wrangle with that. And I don't know, it's really defeating sometimes. I'm very hard on myself. I set usually what I consider are very unrealistic expectations of who I will be to other people and how I will be when I speak with other people. And, my whole shtick for a long time was that Kayla is just blunt and Kayla is just tells it like it is. And Kayla will tell you 100% if you ask her a question about something, she will tell you. And I still think that's true. And so I guess I am still wondering where the selectivity comes from in I had no problem debating 84 college students at one time in my course that I taught. Like, it was very easy for me to do that. I thought nothing of it. I actually think if you connected wires to my brain, that was my idea of just like euphoria. But then on the flip side of that is someone asked me, "Can you turn in the report?" And my first instinct is to be like, "Oh god, now I need to make up a story about why I didn't do it." It's like it's odd. It's very odd to me.
Yeah, it is pretty bizarre, the kind of contradictions that live inside of us.
Mhm.
When you heard that your therapist had been sentenced, in some ways you were primed to understand her. It wasn't a new experience for you.
That's a great way of putting it. You know what? I almost felt like we're a unified front. We're struggling with the same problem in different ways. And now that you say it out loud like that, which is it's such a great perspective is yeah, I mean, primed. Yeah, I felt like we were unified and almost
Yeah.
like commiserating. commiserating, and it's so hard to keep up one side and then lie on the other hand. And yeah, it's weirdly, I think that how bizarre that is makes people more likable to me. At least, well, maybe not the paradox itself, but maybe just the willingness to come forward with it is what makes people a little bit more human-esque to me. And, you and me, when we first talked, we talked about the messiness of people, and I mean, that is a shining example of how messy humans could be, and the way that we kind of justify things is entertaining. That's a word for it.
There's something beautiful about what you said, though, that the unifying force that you experienced, and you're like, maybe it wasn't the fact that she was lying in ways that or had that contradiction in the same way I did. Maybe it was the coming forward, but maybe it was also the fact that she experienced the same contradiction, internal contradiction that you did, or we don't
Yeah.
actually know what's going on inside her, but seems reasonable enough to expect.
Mhm.
In that we sometimes we think that we become likable or we build relationships on the goodness or badness of particular
Mhm.
people or of ourselves.
Yeah.
And the reality is that we build relationships on the shared quality of our experience, even when that
Mhm.
experience is not good or
Sure.
uh, doesn't meet the moral standards.
Mhm. Mhm. Because it's nice to know that there are people like my brother was like this. He died 7 years ago, and this is what I do really miss about our relationship is he had done so many things that were completely effed up. I mean, we're talking like living in his car, carjacking, stealing, snorting, and shooting up every possible substance you can imagine. He was in a gang. He owned firearms, illegal, like literally everything that you could see my brother had experienced. And so there was this really, really reassuring quality about sharing any problem with him in that he would barely blink. Like there was no judgment on his part because his response to pretty much everything was, "I totally get it. I've been there." And there's something really comforting about that. And I felt that in her from the beginning, weirdly, even before any of this would happen.
Mhm. And maybe in some ways it was the same thing that led to the fraud, and we don't know what that was, but that also made her a good therapist.
Weirdly, I think so. And people will take that and make of it what they will. When I posted this on Instagram, I noticed that this was one of my most shared posts. It was shared a lot. And a lot of people that I've never heard of, so like non-followers, if you want to call them that, or I don't know the lingo, but they all found their way into the comment section. And some people just one person literally just wrote no. So it's very clear with her thoughts. Thank you. And then there were others that said, like, this is a dangerous point of view, or are you serious? Girl, this is not it. One chick, I think, blocked me because I can't see the comment anymore, but she essentially tried to convince me that this was like my hidden buried trauma talking or some sort of twisted relationship, almost like a Stockholm sort of syndrome, like trying to see this person in a light when really she was keeping me hostage in lies. And I could
Mhm.
I could understand why people would think that. Maybe if I had been through less in life, I would have the same sort of judgment about another
Mhm.
person being in this situation. But I almost found myself getting defensive for this pretend therapist when people were saying things like that. I almost found myself thinking, like, you never even met her. She's so great. And like wanting to come to her side to defend everything that she had done. I didn't do that because that would be kind of ridiculous to me, but I definitely thought it.
Yeah. You mentioned your brother was addicted to heroin.
Among a million other things, yes.
Substance abuse in your family, was it present beforehand?
Yes, But mental illness is present in our family. So almost my mom's entire side of the family is like a very severe bipolar. We have 4 different people with bipolar in the family, and all of them took up drinking and drug use of some kind. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
their their sadness. Their
Um, for my brother, absolutely. In the sense that I love my I could cry thinking about my parents. I usually do as soon as I start talking about them.
Mhm.
I love them so much that I don't like feeling like anything I'm gonna say is blaming things on them. And so I almost and I used to tell the therapist this that I saw for a while, because she told me one time, like, "You have a lot of anger and resentment for your mom. Maybe you should write a letter, and you don't have to share it with her, but just write it for yourself." And I felt too bad to even be honest, like, in private, in my own home with a notepad. And so I don't know. I guess like the sadness comes from I still do resent a lot of, it's clear to me where these traits came from, but I feel too bad for her, my mom, her being my mom, to ever bring it up to her, to ever want to delve into it more because she's so sensitive. I mean, talk about defensive. This is like the queen of defense. Like anything you bring up to her, she immediately launches into like she's ready to go down swinging. Does that sound familiar? And yeah, I feel sad for her, and selfishly I feel sad for me in the sense that I still have so much anger harbored towards her related to like compulsive behavior and things like that.
There's something about, and in some ways I've experienced this as well, about coming in close contact with mental illness or serious mental illness that shatters some of our perceptions of what is right and wrong and what's a good and bad person.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
And what you're grappling with your mom. And it sounds like to a lesser extent within yourself is, can I have been hurt by something? Can someone who I love and someone who is good legitimately have done stuff that hurt me?
Yeah,
And can they both be true?
definitely. Yeah. I don't know. No, that sounds actually I don't know why I said I don't know, because that sounds completely legit. It sounds completely like that's a reasonable thing to grapple with. And I don't know. I really I still to this day fear bringing up my brother. Like even saying his name, I'm scared to say his name around my parents. It's been 7 years since he died of a fentanyl overdose. And understandably so, for a while there we were all kind of walking on eggshells because my mom could barely eke out even a syllable of his name without bursting into tears. And so we all just kind of took that and thought, "You know what? Maybe it's better if we just I don't wanna say we pretended it never happened, but we did not talk about it at all." It was only within the last 2 or so years that we really kind of started talking about, like, childhood things, very benign childhood memories, like, "Oh my god," we would be at the store, and I'd be like, "Oh my god, mom, do you remember when me and Connor used to play with this all the time?" And she could finally respond and be with a smile, like, "Oh my I remember that, I got you guys so many of those." So, for whatever reason, I take that as an indication, like, this is safe to talk about as long as it's just this very fleeting conversation, but whatever reason, like, I do fear bringing things up to her.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um
When you say whatever reason, it sounds like you have a pretty good sense of what that reason is.
At the yes, yes, and at the time, I like to tell myself, like, for whatever reason, I'm not gonna tell her this right now," and, that still just goes back to that hypocritical side of me where it's like, I hate the idea that we treat people as if they can't handle things, but then I turn around and find myself doing the exact same thing to my mom. And,
Mm,
watering down what I say, completely omitting what I'll say, or just kind of like nodding my head along to keep her happy. And I remember explaining this to that psychotherapist I saw for panic attacks, and I can't remember exactly how she worded it. It was perfect though. I think what she said was, "Your mom is very well protected in your family."
mhm.
And I thought, "Wow, I for I don't know that I would have used that wording ever thinking about it myself, but now that someone else used that wording, she was right on."
Yeah.
And
I heard in your statement or acknowledgement of your own hypocrisy, also empathy for some of the people who you may have found yourself in conflict with.
mhm,
Else that I can see where this response comes from or where we might try to hide parts of ourselves,
mhm,
knowing that the response might not be good or might be painful. I think back to when you were talking earlier about you were saying that generally I think that what triggers us shows us something about ourselves.
mhm,
And but you were starting to question, well, the thing that I get most triggered by is people tiptoeing.
mhm,
And does that reflect something of myself?
for sure.
Yeah.
It's so hypocritical. It's like, "Don't tiptoe around me. I'm gonna tiptoe around my mom and certain people, but why would you tiptoe around me?" It's like, we do that, I think, where, we see ourselves as someone that is capable in many ways and willing to hear anything, and I will go toe to toe with you in any sort of dialogue, but then right over here, well, that's different, and we have our own separate set of rules as to why we think it's different. Um and, I take it seriously in the sense that I understand I don't want to be like this. I will never be perfect. Like, I don't know that there will ever be this perfect balance between, like, the person I am at work is the way I will be with everybody all the time. That sounds also really exhausting. But I try not to take it so seriously to the point that, I'm monitoring my every move all day, every day, because that's its own form of, like, obsession, and I think too much self-awareness is actually a problem too.
I find that for myself, and I think this is true of a lot of us, oftentimes we are most judgmental of something that lives inside of us, but that we're trying to get away from. So
Mhm,
for me, that's coming from an Orthodox Jewish environment and still being involved in that world in some way, but in a world where very high control or very high guidance, and also from a family where emotions are not expressed a whole lot.
mhm,
But I experience a kind of rigidity or sort of difficulty with more fluid ways of being. And in some ways, I've moved away from some of that and have become different. But it's also the thing that I find myself most judgmental of because it still lives inside of me. And I still
sure.
like play in some context and I've experienced it as hurtful. So when I'm saying it, I'm like, no, we can't do that. Or why do we have all these rules attached to? And it's interesting because my husband is coming from the opposite side. So we have like very much opportunity to interact with the parts of ourselves
Interesting.
that we've abandoned, but then that then are being pursued by the other in some way.
Sure. That's interesting. How do you find yourself frequently wrestling with that? Or is it like situations come up where you start to kind of wanna dive deeper into the paradox there?
Mhm. I do think it's like a part of my baseline way of being in the world, but there are things that will, like, I'm generally pretty calm and level-headed, but there are things that will set it off more. And those things are usually conversations with my husband about stuff that he is wanting to grow more in and I'm wanting to grow further away from.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Humans are hard. Humans are, we can't live without each other, so there is that reassuring fact, but yeah, I don't know, the more my field is very hardcore about data and observable, measurable, criterion driven, and don't get me wrong, that is important for goal setting and some behavior change, but, the more every hour that I work in this field and every data point that I see, I am more and more convinced that the most important things about relating to one another and relating to ourselves, they just don't have a metric, and we're never I just think that I need to do a better job of accepting that there are just gonna be some things that there is no answer for.
Mhm.
I am desperately everyone my students, I used to drive them crazy. I'd be like, "Why? Why? Where did you come to that thought? Where? How? Why? When?" And I
Mhm.
just need to let things be more. That's just like the bane of my existence is the acceptance of just letting things be.
Mhm. Yeah, and letting things be in contradiction with one another without having to flatten one in
Yeah,
favor of the other.
or analyze it endlessly or like use it as some sort of thought experiment for when I'm bored. It's like just let things happen, Kayla. Just calm down.
Yeah, I relate to that a lot. Uh, yeah, we're sort of nearing time to wrap up. I
Sure.
typically would start to go into some of the concerns or some of the concerns that there are in the comments and the legitimate sort of intention behind them. And so we won't get into too much depth with this, but
Sure.
for listening, knowing that those can be conversation and taken into account. But I think the biggest concern I hear, one of the takeaways that you had written from this was credentialing doesn't mean shit.
Yes.
And uh, the concern that I hear people coming back to with that is how do we hold people in the field accountable? If there is
Yeah.
no credentialing, how do we know what we're looking at? And eating disorder recovery in particular, because, and you mentioned having had anorexia, which can be deadly. There's a question
Sure.
mark around how do we know whether someone is equipped to treat this?
Yeah.
What do you see as the, I don't know if there's an alternative to credentialing or if there's a place where it's useful. What do you see as the way of addressing that concern, or is it just a concern that we maybe don't have quite an answer to?
Ooh. I think the lethal nature of anorexia does I mean, there would have to be some degree of a credential that demonstrates expertise and education and experience in treating this disorder because it is I think that the fact that it is the most fatal of mental disorders makes it so that I do think there has to be some criteria, like some sort of measurable evidence and proof of competence. I guess where I struggle a lot is someone going to school for something and going to practicum and having the piece of paper that says you're licensed, to me is not proof of competence. It's just proof that you finished something that was required. That's actually a huge issue we're having in my field right now, behavior analysis is, the demand is so high that the quality of supervision and practicum just continues to tank, but it's impossible to capture that in, when you're just logging the hours that you need. Like anyone could kind of somewhat passively go through a practicum accruing hours. And so I don't know what that scope of competence or a required proof of competence would look like. But I don't think that the accrediting body alone necessarily we shouldn't assume that someone's LPC or whatever means that they're credible, reliable, and capable of helping us in the way that we need to be helped.
So in some ways you agree with the comments, the no comments in the sense that you agree that there's a need of some way of understanding or assessing competence and that being transparent to people who are seeking
Sure.
service.
Totally, totally. There needs to be some way of assessing that. And does that mean that, the entire graduate program and practicum itself needs to be changed? Because that's an issue that in my field I see all of it needs to be changed if we want more high quality behavior analysts. But I don't know. I don't know what that would look like. But then, there's the flip side of that where this pretend therapist I saw had all of the most incredible skills of a very well-trained therapist, and she did such wonderful things for me and my family, and yeah, she went to school for, I believe, clinical psych, I wanna say, never did her practicum or maybe didn't finish it, I still don't know, but it's like, how do you
Mhm.
capture the people just who have a natural gift for maybe helping. Like, I find
Right.
myself talking to my husband about this constantly because I have to train so many staff all the time is it's really
Mhm.
clear to me who has the gift and who doesn't, and which people
Mhm.
it comes really easily to versus those where, like, every little minute skill needs to be trained, and even then, they're not showing the competence of the person who barely needs training. So I feel like because humans are so different in their gifts, I don't
Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is, honestly.
Yeah, there is an aspect of it that will always be unknown and unknowable.
I think so too. I think so too. And I mean, there are people that they don't see any therapists at all, or maybe they join their local church or some sort of faith-based group and they find their path to recovery that way. So far for addiction, the most reliable, beneficial treatment, if you could even call it that, is AA. And
Mhm.
there's no accrediting body for AA. I mean, anyone really can be a sponsor. Anyone could join a group and run a group, and you have to wonder, like, what is the accrediting body doing that
Mhm.
all of these people are able to capture without
Yeah. Yeah, that starts to capture a much larger topic, which is about how much of treatment can be manualized versus how much is it the
correct.
human interaction. Do you want to tell listeners anything about yourself professionally, where they can find you? I'll post links to any of your social media or any your
Sure. So professionally, I'm a behavior analyst. So right now, the bulk of my caseload is elementary age kids with autism and emotional disorders. That's kind of that's kind of my element, at least for now. I can't say that I will be doing it forever, but that's what I do professionally. In terms of social media, what is my social media? Let's see. It is Kayla's Kaylas dot common dot sense. and
Will
then
link.
and then
Yeah.
my Substack, that's where I do kind of like my deeper dives into a lot of these issues is oh gosh, it's so long. It is honestly unorthodox dot substack dot com.
Okay. I will post links to those.
Yeah, and it's because anything that I kind of do the Instagram version, the short and condensed version, I will usually dive into like a full essay on the Substack.
Very cool. This was really fun though.
It was so fun. Thank you so much for having me.